clear, there's a lot of reasons to be gloomy. Inflation is high, there's a lot of uncertainty. The question is, why are the extra gloominess, right? And things are, as you said, there are a lot of good things. Unemployment is low. It's been low for almost 2 years, under 4%. Like that's really good. And if you ask people, how's it going? What kind of news have you heard about the economy? It's as bleak as when you go back to the 1970s and early 80s, right? It's very hard to say, oh, that totally makes sense. Like there's these bad things happening in the economy. It's that extra kick. And frankly, that's the piece we want to understand because it could really be telling us something bad is around the corner. People have been doing that for 2 years. And then it's like, okay, what else is going on here?
Well, we can't underplay the importance of inflation to a normal American who is living paycheck to paycheck anyway. You know, economists love to look at core inflation measures, which take out all the stuff that we spend our paycheck on, right? Food is expensive. Right now, cars are incredibly expensive. Plus, financing has climbed. Houses are not even, you don't even want to talk about because that's not even affordable if you can find one. So is that the main problem that Americans have?
Inflation has always been something that people would get riled up about, rightly so, right? And the price tags are legitimately higher and they're not coming down. What we've seen this year is it's slowing down. Inflation is coming down. That is uh, a form of relief, and that it could have been a lot worse. And we there's lots of different pieces of good news that don't come up. We found out last week that household net worth for the typical family jumped 37% pre-pandemic to last year. And that was across income groups, demographic groups. You just saw these big increases, and that matters. Living paycheck to paycheck has been a problem in the US economy for decades. Many people have bigger paychecks, and there's a lot of people who have a little bit of a buffer that have never had it. So it's tough to see all those pieces come together and then have this absolutely bleak outlook for the economy.
Well, Claudia, how much of it is the income inequality, wealth inequality in this country where, you know, the top 10% are doing fine, actually better than fine, but the rest are really struggling with inflation, that type of thing. How much is that to kind of account for it?
This is the rarest of post-recession periods in that we've seen often the bottom do better than they have coming out of any recession. I mean, the top's always going to be fine, right? Wealth inequality, income inequality has been a problem in the United States for decades and decades. We actually saw some compression of that inequality, so it's shrinking some. I mean, you can't hardly see it on the graph, right? It's still big. So that inequality is out there. People tend to focus on what's in front of them, like what they need to do to put food on the table, roof over their head. And there are some surveys, if you ask people about their own finances, they're more upbeat than when they look out at the economy. And so that's why I've written two pieces now at Bloomberg about this extra pessimism, trying to explore what it could be. And often it points to things that go beyond the economy. Because we're asking people big picture about their outlook. And there are other factors at play. We went through COVID and the war in Ukraine is ongoing. We've had so much bad news since the pandemic began. And then we do have features of how we transmit that bad news
Yes.
out into the public. And that's something
Social.
that's different than the 1970s.
Yeah, social media is what I
Mhm.
assume what you're talking about here.
Yes.
And I think we all know now that the way for Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg to make money is for people to get angry and hateful on social media. That drives engagement and, at the end of the day, the bottom line. So it kind of amplifies everything that's bad, doesn't it?
Right. And we've always had the case that bad events happen. The news comes out, it has a bias towards the bad. There's research, news organizations, right? It's more negative. If it
If it
bleeds, it
leads, it
leads,
leads. There you go.
right? So this
Ooh,
is not
jinx.
new. But what happens is once it gets on platforms, social media platforms, it can spread far and wide and really fast. So it makes this bad news very personal because it can be conveyed by real people and not necessarily print media or, on the TV. And it absolutely is the case that not only does negative spread faster, it gets absorbed like there's a human tendency towards the negative. So it's like you put these three factors together, really bad events, news has a bias towards the negative, people love the negative, and then we can spread it really fast. So that's one way to think about it, that you could get this extra kick. But absolutely, we talked about a lot of economic factors that may not be captured, may be different in the past. That could be in there too. So it's really important to kind of pull this apart and figure out what's going on, because if people are really downbeat, it can create a self-fulfilling prophecy in that they pull back and they get more downbeat. And then before we know it, we're in a recession. So like this is an important question. Like people could be right. I mean, we could really be in a bad place in the next year or two.